Welcome to another episode of the Hack My Age podcast. So, I'm doing a solo episode today. It's been a long while. And so I'll try to cut to the chase, although it's going to be really hard. And this episode was requested actually by some people who made some comments in our YouTube videos, and they wanted to know, what was your menopause journey like or is like? And they wanted to know my hormone therapy routine and what I've learned from my guests after 233 episodes, more or less. So I've learned a lot in the years. So I'm going to try to make this like bullet point. It's going to be really hard, but to share my personal journey, well, I am still perimenopausal. I think some of you guys have seen that reel I made. I'm very late perimenopausal because I still have my period and I'm 54. And that's late. Usually the average age of menopause is 51. So here I am, here clinging on, but I'm on hormone therapy. So sometimes I question, is this a period, like a real period, or is this a hormone therapy period? And I'll explain what that is later. But my journey to understand a bit more about menopause, I guess probably started in my late 40s. And I thought, well, I should probably be paying attention to this. I don't know, because I pretty much certainly relative to some other people, I'm asymptomatic. And that doesn't mean I'm not having symptoms. It just means that the typical symptoms I'm not having or don't have very intense ones, I guess. So I don't want to consider myself lucky in that sense. I always worry most about the asymptomatic woman. And I think I probably still would have no clue about menopause and not be interested in it unless I had this podcast, because it was you who pushed me more into learning more about menopause and hormones. So some of my symptoms, let's say when I was around 50, 51, my DEXA scans were showing great bones. And then I let it go for a couple of years. And then at 53, I'm in osteopenia. Shock, horror. And that is that menopause. Yeah, that's one of the symptoms of menopause. I also recall now in kind of looking back, thinking, well, my cholesterol started rising around 45. I couldn't understand it. Didn't know anything about menopause at the time, or perimenopause. And then also my thyroid started going a little wonky at around 51. But I'm asymptomatic for the typical hypothyroid patient who has thinning hair and who's very tired and who has weight gain. Those kind of symptoms I don't have, but my numbers weren't optimal. So here I am. These are part of the perimenopause experience. And then, of course, maybe more dry skin. I was so happy because I didn't have acne anymore. I was one of those people with adult acne. And then osteoarthritis. What's that? That is that menopausal, and menopause accelerates definitely the osteoarthritis experience. And so that's why I had a total hip replacement. I tried getting on hormone therapy thinking, oh, this will help. Maybe it prolonged I guess I got away with, bought more time, perhaps with a little bit of hormone therapy. And then also the libido's kind of changing, or maybe it's also coinciding with other things that are going on in my life, like the osteoarthritis. You can't really open your legs, and it's really hard to have sex when you are blocked. So that's a little bit too intimate, but is that menopause? Is it the hormones? Is it other things going on in my life? Who knows, right? I always say it's a combination of everything. I have to say the 30-day sex challenge that I did prior to my whole hip surgery was probably better acting than testosterone supplementation. So is it always your hormones, or is it always just replacing things with hormones? I never tracked my period in my youth. I wish I did. I had a general practitioner tell me I don't need hormones when I started to question about them when I was about 50. So I went and found another doctor, and I got started with hormones, bioidentical hormones, at the age of 50. And I started just with estriol, like a vaginal estriol. Like that was my big entry. because I didn't know much. And of course, the doctors weren't really testing me, but I insisted on getting a Dutch test. That's the dried urine test of comprehensive hormones. It's where you pee on these little sticks and then you dry them and then you send them to a lab and then they tell you about your hormonal profile, but more importantly, the metabolites of your hormones. And I was particularly interested in the estrogen metabolism because my mother died of breast cancer when she was 57. So you can imagine the fear that I had when I was exploring the world of hormones. Should I do this? Should I not do this? And so when I took the Dutch test, it showed, yeah, pretty much most of your hormones are gone, but progesterone at the time was still pretty good. And I then proceeded to take the Dutch test every year and a half because it's friggin' expensive. And then you got to pay a doctor to read this. So, and at that point, my doctors were not testing my blood. And now I know better because I'd like to know really what's going on in serum levels, but that's the way it was. Interestingly enough, that doctor who told me I don't need hormones told me I had vaginal atrophy, and that's the thinning of the vaginal wall. And she asked me, do you have pain during sex? Is it really dry there? And I was like, no, it's actually pretty juicy. I don't know. I mean, I didn't even know what the word vaginal atrophy meant at the time. But I said, so she sent me on my way, found another doctor who gave me the estriol, vaginal estriol. And then I went to see that same doctor a year later. And she goes, your vaginal atrophy is gone. And I said, oh, does that mean I reversed it? And I did it with hormones. And that's my intro to hormones. And then in terms of symptoms, I would say at around 51 is when I noticed that I was getting hot the week before my period. And it was more like kicking off the sheets in the middle of the night. And when I saw I did that a couple times in a row, then I said, oh, okay. I started, of course, tracking my periods probably around 50 using the Clue app. And I noticed, actually, I started seeing a cycle and I was like, okay, that means my period's coming. No big deal. Just dealt with being a little hot, waking up sometimes at night. Didn't bother me. And then around the age 53, just last year and a half, I noticed I'm kicking the sheets off all the time. Interesting. Then it was really annoying. And then I was like, okay, I got to put a stop to this. And then I started testing my blood serum. And that's when I said, okay, I really got to jack up the game here. And I added some estradiol. I was playing around with estradiol gel, just, you get the pharmaceutical. And then I tried a spray. And then now I'm on a compounded formula. But as I'm a nomad and I travel all the time, it was really hard for me to get my hormones and then to stay on them and to be regular and then to get the same brand all the time because I would see different doctors all around the world. So it was kind of a crazy mess, but I also wasn't having these debilitating symptoms. So you kind of brush it off. But in the meantime, my bones are getting more brittle or your heart is getting more fragile or constricted. And when I was doing the Dutch test, because later on, so I added in the estradiol, so I had the estriol, the estradiol, and then I added in progesterone when I started the estradiol. The estradiol, because then you risk the uterine lining may get thickened, and this is a breeding ground for cancer. So this is why doctors always put you on a progesterone, especially if you have a uterus. I think women should be taking progesterone or enjoy the benefits of progesterone, even if they don't have a uterus, but that's not my journey. So, okay, at this point now, 52, 53, I'm doing the estradiol, the estriol, and then the progesterone. I eventually added in testosterone, compounded cream, felt nothing. And I increased dosages. I can see my serum levels are good. So I'm always questioning if I should be on testosterone or not. So my journey in terms of my cycling, I have a cycle. I always had a normal cycle. My periods have always been light, lasting like 4 days tops. I've been really blessed, or maybe it's things I'm doing. I don't know. I've had a 25-day cycle. My periods have never been an issue. I didn't care. I trained through my periods. I never been one of these people to stop things because of my periods. I just used a tampon and got on with my day. My periods, so I told you, yeah, my periods were regular until about age 53. And then they started to go away like 1 month. I'm like, ooh. And what happened was I actually forgot to stop my progesterone. And I only figured this out after a couple of times my periods stopped. And I'm like, oh, I think I'm starting now, going to 12 months without a cycle, going to menopause, and then it would come back because I realized there was progesterone involved with that. However, I strategically used my progesterone during my hip surgery because I was scheduled to have a period the day of my surgery. And I did not want to have that happen when I could barely move and then ask staff to, I don't know, help me with a bleedy vagina. Didn't want to do that. So I continued my progesterone and I delayed my period, but now it's 2 months after my surgery and still no period. So let's see what happens. That's my sort of journey. I hope that's what you wanted. What did I learn from my guests? So my guests, and just to go back to the hormone thing, I guess if you want to know a bit more, the journey always changes. The products that I use, the things that I'm doing, I always test and assess and then decide if I'm going to continue something or not. So upcoming, I'm doing another Dutch test. It's been a year and a half and I've been waiting 2 months for my period to come back because when you do a Dutch test, this dried urine test, then you need to be doing it on day 20 more or less of your cycle. And I've given up now. I said, okay, I'm just going to take the Dutch test, whether the period comes or not, because you can do that. And then I will have more results. And then that will tell me if I'm going to continue with this regimen. And if you want to know even more details, I am taking the compounded estradiol is 0.75 milligrams. And it's a compounded cream and you just do a little click and I rub it on my inner arms and I do one in the morning and then I do one in the evening. And then if I wake up at night a little hot, then the next night I should actually even if I wake up, I can actually put it on. I always forget to do that. But the next night I will double my dose just for a few days and then I will lower it down again. So that's the amount that I'm taking now. And it always changes when you're going through this journey and trying to figure stuff out. And then the progesterone, I take 100 milligrams and now I'm playing around with rhythmic dosing. And so I'll go on 100 milligrams for maybe 3-4 days. Then I'll increase the dosage to 200 milligrams and for several days. And then I'll bring it back down for several days. So within that 14-day period, I am taking progesterone because I don't take it from days 1 to day 14 of my cycle. And even if I don't have a cycle, I'm pretending I do, and I still follow that regimen. And then from 14 to 28, more or less, actually, I'm trying to go maybe sometimes 12 to 25 because I have a 25-day cycle. I will play around with that rhythmic dosing, and I don't really see or feel anything right now. But I just started with that. And then the testosterone, I think it's 3 milligrams, and I do that once a day. And then the estriol, I take, these are little pessaries, vaginal pessaries, and I take that 3 times a week, and I think it's 0.5 milligrams. Interestingly enough, I just did a podcast interview with Dr. Felice Gersh, and she is probably in her 60s, maybe late 60s. She's still biohacking her hormones. I asked her, what are you doing? What are you taking? And how do you dose it? And she's like, well, I'm playing around now with vaginal progesterone. And so it just shows you that this journey, it's not like you find your dosage and then you'll be good for life. Things change all the time. And I always say, like, we're in the Wild West here and trying to figure out what's best for us because there's never one size fits all. So here's an example of where I'm at. And it's just what works for me. If you try this, maybe it'll work, maybe not. Every woman is different. So let's get back to our guests. What do I learn from the guests? Okay. Just like Dr. Felice Gersh, you always learn something new, like what I just told you. Every doctor has a different method and a different belief. Okay, that's not only the people I interview, but it'll probably be the doctors that you are seeing. If you've seen 1, 2, 3, or 4 doctors, you know what I mean, because they all think something different. There's a lot of confusion in this space. And this is what I hope to do with this podcast, is empower you to make your own decisions, right? To know that just being aware of that is good. And then being aware that everyone has a different menopause experience. You may be talking to your girlfriend and she's just sliding by, no symptoms, and doesn't do anything. Here you are with every symptom under the sun. And maybe she's not having a healthy diet lifestyle and you're doing everything you can and you're still suffering. It's just the way it is. It happens. So being aware that we all have different menopause experiences, and that when we take hormones, first of all, I also learned from our guests, that hormones are not bad. Okay. We live with them all our lives. And so we love our hormones. We just have to know them, get to know them, understand them. And of course, if you're going to take them, then bioidentical is the queen. So when you are taking hormones, you're going to learn that you can't do one size fits all. You're going to have to probably take time to figure out what is working for you and what isn't. Okay. And you will notice for the guests on our podcast too, that finding a good doctor is really hard, but you need to find a good doctor who understands menopause and is going to help you through this journey. And if they don't know as much, I think you guys are listening right now, you are ahead of the game. Like, you know way more than I thought you know. And I think I underestimated you, because you're biohacking your way and you're telling me you know more than your doctor. And that's amazing. So the thing is that, okay, you have to understand whatever you do or you don't do, there's a risk, and you get that. But if you're getting the information that you need, and I'm just one of many, many voices out there, because you're going to hear so many opposing, conflicting information. And that's your job to figure out what resonates best with you, and then work with your doctor. Have a doctor who's like at least willing to say, hey, okay, I'm going to just monitor your breasts, your vagina, your endometrial lining, and make sure that cardiovascular levels look good on this journey as you go through it. So hopefully you have a doctor who's willing to do that. So I think many of you guys listening are taking menopause in your own hands and just trying to wait until the doctors catch up to speed here, because we don't have time to wait. Okay. You can, and that's fine. That's your choice. I've also learned through this, many of our guests, that breast cancer survivors can and probably should be on bioidentical hormone therapy. I've done some really new upcoming podcasts that are very interesting on this. And I'm not saying go and start taking hormones if you have cancer. I'm going to ask you to go talk to your doctor or find a doctor who understands. And it's usually because once you're treated, most of the doctors that I've interviewed say, well, it's always once you're treated. There are some doctors who say you take it all throughout if you want, and they know how to do that. But most of them would say, wait until you're finished treated. Once you're treated, then you go on to the bioidentical hormone therapy. And there are different dosages, different ways to do it when you are in a post-cancer state. So another thing that I've learned through this journey and some of our podcast guests is that also not everyone chooses hormones, and not everyone wants that journey. And that's totally fine, because I do interview a lot of doctors who are very pro hormones, and including me. But I always say, look, this is just one voice. And if you have that intuition, if you have that feeling that it's not for you, it's not for you. And I wouldn't do it. So I think it's one of those things. Then you still need to do something about your health and protect your future self, whether you are on hormones or not. And we've learned a lot of great techniques from our guests, which I'm going to share with you after what I'm doing for my menopause journey. And don't feel bullied into doing hormones or not doing hormones. You do what's right for you. But what I always say is that you can't out hormone a bad diet and lifestyle. And that's really what I'd like to share with you as well. And one thing that's very, very clear in all of our guests is that menopause is inevitable and suffering is totally optional. So you can be perfectly not on hormone therapy and not suffer whatsoever because of great lifestyle changes. Is that going to help you reach your goals on whatever it is post menopause? I don't know. So that's your journey, and that's something for you to find out. Now, what am I doing to have a smooth menopause journey? This is just really personal, and I'm doing this episode because it was asked to do this, and I want to stress that everybody's different. When I'm looking at my own menopause journey, I ask, well, what do I want? What do I want for myself now and for my future self? I just want to be happy. That's like the biggest thing. If I can just be happy and stay happy, life is good. So what do I need to be happy? Well, I need energy, and I want to have good energy to do the things that I want to be doing that make me happy. And that means being strong. I want strong muscles, strong bones. I want a strong brain. I want a strong heart. I want my breasts to be healthy. My mother, she died of breast cancer when she was 57. So that's a big concern for me. So I want my breasts to be healthy. I want my skin to look good. Yes, I'm a little vain. I want my immune system to be strong. I want my gut to be good. And I want perfect vaginal health, because these all go in together. I didn't even mention things like eyeballs and teeth, and which are also very important too. But I want all these, I want to be strong. I want all these things to be good because I want to be independent. I don't want to age and be dependent on people. So then I think, well, what am I scared of? Like, what's going to motivate me, right? Because fear can be motivating. It scares me to have a loss of independence. And I've felt that big time with this hip osteoarthritis. You are incapacitated. I know what it feels like to live, and this is ageist of me, in an 80-year-old body, because 80-year-olds, that's just implying that all 80-year-olds are feeling really horrible. But so that's very ageist of me, but you know what I mean. So I need my independence. I'm scared to be dependent on so many people for many things. I don't want to be frail. I don't want a hip fracture. I'm not going to have to worry about that with the hip operation, a new hip, and I'm doing the second one. So I guess I won't have to worry about the hip fracture after that. But okay, other fractures, other falls. I'm worried about dementia. That doesn't sound very attractive. The number one killer of all men and women is heart disease, heart attacks, strokes. That scares me. Breast cancer, of course, it's in my family. Skin that's overaged, accelerated aging, melanoma, skin cancers, getting sick. Again, this loss of independence, being incontinent, having no intimacy, no sex life, being unhappy, like all that. Just, I don't want that. What I did in my 30s is definitely supporting me in my 50s. I really believe that longevity and menopause starts in childhood. So the things that you've gone through your life will affect how you get older. I'm a gerontologist after all. That's what we learned. But we know now also for menopause as well. If you had depression when you were younger, well, you are much farther at risk, much farther. I think it was twice as having a double risk factor for having it come back again in menopause. So what we do in taking care of ourselves when our younger age affects us in our older age. And when we're 50, we're still young, okay? Like we still have 20, 30, 40, 50 years going for us. It depends on how your genetics, it depends on a lot of things. So what I'm doing now in my 50s is going to support me in my 70s. I believe it. So that means I have to take action now. Okay. Because the past is the past. If you're like, oh, I had a really shitty childhood, or I really didn't take care of myself in my 30s and 40s, and what am I going to do now? It's done. It's done. It's okay. Just move on. So now we are in our 50s or your 60s, or however old you are listening. And you can do things now to support your future self. Because when you think about Alzheimer's and heart disease, frailty, fractures, cancers, these brew 20 to 30 years before they're diagnosed. It's not like, oh, I did something yesterday and now I got cancer. Like, it doesn't work like that. Okay. So if we are concerned about those diseases, like I am, then hopefully you'll be motivated to do something now. And that's important. So I'll try to run very quickly through what I do. And it's basically diet, lifestyle, and hormones. Okay, so that's what's supporting me, and at least I believe me, that's supporting me through my menopause journey, as well as protect my future self. Now, there's no guarantees in life. Like, believe me, I did everything in my life from youth until now to not get osteoarthritis. And osteoarthritis is not osteoporosis, because actually I have osteopenia, which I mentioned before, but I got the bone strength of almost a gymnast because I did this thing called a REM scan, which you're going to hear an episode, if not already, about that. So that's important because you can have low bone density, but very high bone strength. So I've got high bone strength, but the osteoarthritis is an inflammation of the joints. And I've done everything to avoid that. So sometimes the shit hits the fan, even when you do the best of the best. There are no guarantees in life, right? So to cover some of these things really quickly, if you're concerned about frailty and fractures, well, then you got to work on your muscles and your bones. I move as much as I possibly can, which is very limiting right now, but most of my life I was moving every single day, and recovery is very important. So rest and sleep, making sleep a priority, is super important for all of the things. So pre-osteoarthritis, I did strength training, of course, rehab all my life because I have a torn ACL since in my 20s. So it feels like I'm always living in rehab mode. Cardio, when I was younger, of course, I did aerobics. And depending on the trend of the day, I will dance, I will row, I will run, I will bike, something cardio for my heart. And then I would get in some yoga or stretching, Pilates, mobility. And then Katsu came into my life, Katsu training about a year and a half. Thank God, because leading up to the operation, I could only do very minimal movement and mobility. And Katsu saved my bone mass. I mean, my muscle mass. And now this is 2 months post operation. I'm still in the rehab mode, still very limited, do my Katsu, but I will be gearing up to all those things that I mentioned before as I get better after the second operation. The other thing that's really important for your bones and your muscles, if you're worried about frailty and fractures, then you got to get good nutrition. Those muscles do not grow if you don't feed it. And so eating enough protein is key. And we're not talking only about the muscles, and we're talking about your bones as well, cartilage, any other tissue, your skin health, all the other things in your body run with protein. Okay. And I'm saying it's just we're made out of proteins in our body, hair, skin, and nails. You think about it's protein. So we need to eat protein. But when it comes to nutrition, getting your antioxidants, your anti-inflammatory foods, your vegetables, your fruits, great supplements. I take creatine monohydrate, essential amino acids, bone broth. These are some simple things that I add because I'm concerned about my bone health, my muscle health, and frailties and fractures. And what else do I do? Of course, keeping processed foods as low as possible. That was really important. That's something I do. And then I'm worried about dementia, and I want to be concerned about my brain. I have the ApoE4 gene. I have one allele. So I'm at a higher risk of Alzheimer's than probably you. So I have to be good with my nutrition, my supplements. I'm not going to go through all that now. Meditation. I love Newcom, which is neuroacoustic software. I use this to get my brain into a meditative state. I do breath work. I'm a breath work instructor. Stress management. There's 1,000,001 things we do for that. And that's something I definitely work on. And I watch those cardiovascular markers because the brain and the heart are connected, right? What's good for the brain is good for the heart, and vice versa. And I'm always training my brain, I guess, with certain perspectives and attitudes. I guess it's more mind or mindset or mental health. And the other thing for my brain, in terms of brain training, is I am a lifelong learner. In gerontology, we always say lifelong learning is one of the keys to a healthy brain. I did a master's program in gerontology when I was 52. I started my business at 47. And when I started, and I continue to learn because the business keeps growing, I have to learn social media. I have to learn editing software. I had to learn podcast techniques. I have to learn how to engage with people. There's so many things that the brain has to do when you start your own business. Oh my gosh, it's overwhelming, but it's so good for the brain. It's like exercise for the brain. I learned Cantonese when I was 45, not by any means a fluent speaker, but the basics. I speak 6 languages, constantly making my brain function. And I'm always learning new skills because of the business. And I love to travel. I think travel is one of the best things for the brain. You take it in a whole new environment and you're challenged on so many levels that I think that's what I'm doing for my brain. I'm trying it all. And you got an APOE4 gene, you try your best. And I don't even have anyone in my family who's had Alzheimer's or even barely dementia. It's really, but it concerns me. And so that's what I do. For my heart, of course, all the things that I just spoke about in terms of exercise and nutrition and supplementation. I take fish oil, I take fatty 15, lots of other supplements that I'm not going to go into right now. I test all of my cardiovascular markers. I manage my thyroid. I'm looking because the thyroid and cholesterol is very, very intertwined. And then, of course, stress and stress management. When I was doing my gerontology program, I was learning about the mind-body connection and how we get this atherosclerotic buildup in our arteries as we age. And so I asked one of my professors, I said, well, wait a second. And what if we eat like the best diet and we're on the treadmill all the time, exercising? Like, will we not have this plaque buildup? And he said, no, because and I said, and you're still stressed. You had a very high stress, but yet you do the exercise and diet. And he said, no, because you have the stress, you're going to still have the buildup, and that's dangerous. So if you're concerned about your heart health, you got all the great things going on with your supplements and nutrition and your exercise. If you don't manage that stress, it will still kill you. So that's just kind of we're going to die anyways, right? But let's try to prolong it, leave it to the end as long as we possibly can. And then also for my heart health, I try to be happy. I try my best to be in a positive state. I try to be around my friends, building oxytocin. Oxytocin is an incredible hormone. It's the bonding hormone. And I should do a whole other podcast on this, but basically there's these receptors on your heart for oxytocin. So you can literally heal a broken heart physically with oxytocin. Pretty amazing. So anyways, skin and breast health as well. What we do for that? Same thing. Exercise, get the right nutrition, get the right supplements, manage the stress, sleep. They don't call it beauty sleep for nothing. I wear my sunscreen, particularly on my face, on my arms and legs, less so, because I do want some vitamin D absorption, but I am understanding that I am trading off pretty damaged, ugly skin on my legs or arms in order to get that. So, but I won't negotiate with my face. So I put 50 on my face and I stay out of the sun. I keep my face out of the sun as much as I can, wearing hats or umbrellas. I get in the shade. It's super important for my vanity. And I do have a regular skincare routine. I'm so happy. I started probably too late. I was in my 40s when I decided I'm going to buy good skincare and do some regular sun routines and use eye cream and all that. So that happened late, but better late than never. And for my breasts, I'm doing breast screening, and my whole view on that has completely changed after a couple of interviews. They are coming up soon. It's going to blow your mind. And of course, confuse you because I have conflicting guests, but I want to give you all sides of the story. For my vagina, what am I doing? Well, the same thing, the exercise and the nutrition and this regular sex, but I can't have that now because my husband's walking across Europe for a year. So I do the vaginal pelvic floor exercises. I try to connect emotionally to people, well, to my husband most. And I'm now, because he's gone for a year, I see him, I go and I visit him every month, but because of this hip operation, hasn't happened. So I am looking into those, Susan Bratton red light vaginal biohacking devices, because this is keeping your vaginal health really, really good. So I need to really get on the ball with that. And my immune system and my gut all of the above, and going back to just being happy. Just be happy. Just be happy. I think if I can be happy, I can do a lot less of the other things, because I do believe a lot in that. And so I am so happy right now. Whenever I go, you can't get frustrated with whatever's going on in your life. Things maybe not going your way. And I always believe that life is working for you, not against you. You are in this position for a reason. I was supposed to have osteoarthritis. I was supposed to have this hip operation and a second one for some reason. And I will figure it out looking back probably years from now. So I practice patience. I need a lot of patience right now because my brain is going faster than my body. I practice gratitude. I try to be very satisfied. I hated that word satisfied. That just seems so lame before, until I read a quote, and I can't remember exactly what it said, but it said that satisfaction is being happy with what you have now and also looking forward to the future and what that will bring. And I was like, okay, I'll take that. And positivity. I am a positive person, if you haven't noticed already. That has gotten me through life. In the worst of times, I find the silver lining. I just do. So, and right now I'm just not watching too much news. That's helping me a lot too, stay positive. So there you go. I hope that was interesting. I hope that gave you what you want, what you were looking for. I hope you've learned a couple of tips. I will, as we go through these solo episodes, I will take deep dives into certain areas that we talk about here, because it would take me probably 10 hours to go through my routine for my heart, my health, my brain, whatever it is that I'm doing. So there you go. Remember that menopause is inevitable, but suffering, that's optional.